Hello, my friends. We have a new hero revealed to us from an article. It is Nick Fury coming in February in the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. expansion box. Gotta say, I love the art from this artist. I think Bruno Frenda. I love this stuff. I think they need to use this artist more. Let me know what you think in the comments, but just getting that out of the way. But this is a deep dive video, so I'm going to be getting very nerdy, talking about the cards, how they work together, what aspect cards he'll like, what decks he'll want to build, that kind of thing. Just sort of trying to understand this character as much as we possibly can with the information we have been given, which is of course incomplete because he's just revealed and no one's even played him yet. So he's got the usual hand size, 5 hero form, 6 alter ego, 10 hit points, 2 fort, 2 attack, 2 defense, very standard. Slightly better than normal recovery stat, but I don't think that's a big deal here because you might not be getting attacked that much with Nick Fury. More on that very shortly. So he's got 3 traits, which is pretty unique: Shield, Soldier, and Spy. Shield and Spy being a little bit more relevant than Soldier, but really it's his abilities which make him very interesting. And he has forms. So Suit Up says put your suit form upgrade into play, Assault side face up, and Infiltrate action change to Stealth suit form. So at the beginning of the game, you put your Stealth suit in, and you start on the Assault form side. Then you can change to the Stealth suit form side with Infiltrate, which I think you're going to want to do in most cases. I think you start with Infiltrating, and then boom, you go into Assault mode and unleash carnage. And I think that's a really fun kind of game plan and sort of, gameplay loop to sort of build your, a hero around. So I'm really excited for that. So how you get to stealth form is kind of there on the alter ego side, and he also has some events which let you do it as well. So if you can't find the right event to go back to stealth form, you go alter ego and you can kind of reset it. A little bit like Deathglow and Valkyrie, but I don't think it's going to be anywhere near as punishing, so I wouldn't worry about that at all. But then in his hero side, we're going to look at his second ability first, Break Cover. When you attack, change to Assault suit form. So you're sneaking around, and as soon as you attack, boom, your cover is blown, and you get to deal a lot of damage. More on how the Assault form actually helps you do that shortly, but that's really cool. So go into stealth mode in alter ego, sneak around in hero form. The enemy will think you're an alter ego, which we'll look at in a second, and then as soon as you attack, it's go time. The enemy knows you're there. It's such a cool design. He's also got this Gather Intel ability, whereas after he makes a basic fort, place 1 threat on your suit form upgrade. Placing threat on one of your upgrades sounds really weird, but he uses it kind of as a resource to do different things with, which is really fun, and we'll look at that now. Let's have a look. So very balanced stat line. I don't think the defense is going to matter too much because you're not getting attacked a lot, and that is because let's look at the stealth side. So this form says when an enemy would attack you, it schemes instead. So as long as you're in stealth mode, you're not getting attacked. You are, it's a pseudo invincibility. And that's something we've seen Tony, the designer for this character, kind of mess around with on Deadpool a little bit as well. But this is a very different way though, because the enemy is scheming against you. So it's still activating, just not attacking. And in solo play, this might seem scary, like, okay, I'm stealthing around, but now the enemy's scheming a lot against me, not just if I'm alter ego. What if I get advanced? You would be right to be worried, but it does say place 1 threat from that activation here instead of on the main scheme if there is 5 or less threat on this card. So when stealth makes the enemy scheme instead of attack you, you absorb some of the threat they would put on the main scheme as a bonus on your stealth suit that you can then spend as to benefit you, and you do that on the assault side. I feel like the kind of loop they're trying to have you play around is you get to 5 threat or maybe 4, and then you flip, spend that threat from stealth, and then go back into stealth form to rebuild up to 4 or 5 threat. But we'll see how that goes. I think you're going to be able to play around with that quite flexibly, and that will depend on different circumstances. But basically, yeah, let's say you've got 5 threat on stealth. Okay, time to go on the attack. All you have to do is break cover, make an attack, whether it's a basic attack, an upgrade, or an event. I should say supports and allies don't count as you attacking, so that's a way to attack from stealth without being found. But as soon as Nick Fury himself actually attacks, boom, you break cover, you swap to assault mode, and because of the interrupt timing, whatever attack you make, you can start to spend threat on to empower, because the wording here is interrupt. When you attack, remove up to 3 threat from here. This attack deals 1 additional damage for each threat removed this way. So kind of like Gambit, I can remove some counters, some threat in this case, to empower and attack. But whereas Gambit is locked to events, this isn't locked to events at all. So I can boost Nick Fury's basic attack, some kind of upgrade damage, or just events anyway, which is probably going to be one of the most common ways to do it, because he wants the basic fort to get more threat to increase other attacks. It's really, really fun, really interesting. Hopefully you guys are following, because I think this is more complicated than the average character, with this moving threat and different forms and making the enemy do different things, and you're able to spend these threat to increase damage on different ways. But I really, really like this. And one of the most thematic things that came to my mind is the Stealth Strike card. So maybe you're stealthing around, you've built up some threat that you can use to enhance its damage. Well, Stealth Strike says, deal 4 damage to an enemy. If it's defeated by this attack, remove 2 threat. So by breaking stealth with Stealth Strike, you can use Assault to increase Stealth Strike's damage to deal, 5, 6, 7 damage. Make sure that minion is defeated and get the bonus. I don't think this is going to be a super powerful thing to do, especially because Nick has an attack event himself, which wants to defeat enemies. They're kind of competing at the lower player counts with less minions out. But nonetheless, very thematic, very cool. I like this kind of thing. And really wanted to demonstrate the timing that as soon as you initiate kind of playing this attack, boom, you've broken cover. You can empower that attack that breaks you out of cover. So really, really like this. I've already mentioned Gambit. I think Gambit and Nick Fury have a lot in common. I would say Nick Fury is heavily inspired by the Gambit because Gambit builds up these counters and he can spend up to 3 of them to increase the damage of an attack. But like I said, it's limited to events. So Nick Fury is more flexible in that way, but Gambit doesn't have to, manage stealth form than assault form. So maybe he's more flexible in that way. We've also got, because, in stealth form, when the enemy schemes, they scheme basically for 1 less, very reminiscent of She-Hulk. And I think because you're building up these counters ready to unleash a bigger assault, it might feel a little bit like Nebula, where you have a kind of a quiet turn, and then you'll have guns blazing assault turn. With Nebula, that'd be her techniques triggering, and then you go back to building up the threat, or with Nebula, back to playing your techniques, and so on and so forth. So there's a couple of characters at play here so far, just looking at his identity card and the form card, and I am really, really excited about this. I do think this looks really, really fun. I would say looking at these characters here, and I do especially love Nebula and Gambit, but I do enjoy She-Hulk these days. I'm a She-Hulk enjoyer. My initial impression is Nick Fury might take the best parts of all of them. He might be more fun than all of them. We'll have to see. He's not out yet, but I have very good impressions from the way this works, how interactive it is, huge amount of agency, and just different style of play. Like I say, solo, it's going to be a little bit risky with, making the enemy scheme, but you should be okay in most scenarios, especially in modern scenarios. Ones which only have 1 main scheme typically are pretty generous. But he'll definitely have some bad matchups, especially, it's pointed out in Nelson's stream where we did a live reaction. That Master Mold, who gets to put a minion in play when he schemes, is going to, really love it if you're in stealth form. It's going to be very bad for you. But I would say that that's not a super hard scenario. I think you could just kind of live in assault form against the Master Mold and do just fine. And on the flip side, though, there are scenarios where making enemy scheme instead of attack is going to be so useful, but on the whole, I think he'll be viable against basically pretty much all scenarios. One of the big question marks with Nick Fury is, how often are you going to be changing form? How quick can you, build the threat? And once you're in assault form, you still have ways to build threat. Your basic fort is the one we've looked at so far, but his events can do it too a little bit, and upgrades and things. So maybe once you go into assault form, maybe you don't go back to stealth very often. I think it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. I feel like the way the article that revealed him was written and the cards we're seeing, they want you to go back, but I don't think there's tons and tons of motivation because, making the enemy scheme, even if it's 1 less and giving you that, threat to use, a little bit scary. I think in multiplayer, you'll feel a lot more, easy about going back to stealth form. But we'll see how that shakes out. I do think that he might have some stuff we haven't seen yet to really reward going back to stealth form more. But yeah, I'm not quite sure exactly how much he's going to want to flip and how much he's going to want to flip back. But what we can see is that once per round, basically, stealth is going to trigger at least once, and Nick Fury can basic fort at least once. So you're getting 2 threat a turn minimum in most cases. I think that will kind of be the game plan. By making the enemy scheme, there will be threat even in solo play to make sure your 2 forwarding won't be wasted. Because, let's say you're in hero form, the threat just ticks up by 1 on the main scheme. If you zeroed it before by basic forwarding, you're not going to have a very efficient forwarding there. But we'll have to see how exactly it works out in practice in terms of frequency of flipping and exactly when to do it. But we can look at some of the ways he'll get threat and see kind of where things end up from the preview. And let's look at some of those. So here's 2 copies of Covert Surveillance. This is a 1-cost event that removes 2 threat, which doesn't seem very good. But if you're in stealth suit form, you can put that threat onto your suit form upgrade. So basically, these 2 threat you're removing from a scheme, you can now use to basically deal 2 damage in the future. So actually, in that regard, it turns out quite efficient. If you're not in stealth form, you can go to stealth form. So it's a way to go back into the shadows. But then you're kind of getting a low efficiency card, but you get to change form. I don't know how much that's worth it, because I would be very tempted maybe to not play this unless I didn't have any other good options if I was in assault form. But we'll have to see how appealing it is to keep going back to stealth form when we have ways, which we're going to look at in a second here, to keep building counters while in assault form. However, certain cards make covert surveillance better. In the live reaction that we did with Nelson, it was pointed out that Passion for Justice can increase the amount of threat removal covert surveillance does, which coincidentally means the extra threat removed is now going to be able to be put onto your suit. So if you take Passion for Justice and let's say operative skill, very thematic for covert surveillance and Nick Fury in general, you can basically increase its amount of threat removed from 2 to 3 to 4. And I mean, in very rare cases, with 2 Passion for Justices in hand, if you want to overpay, which you totally could, I mean, you could remove 5 threat and then get 5 threat on your suit. So you kind of got 5 damage ready to go. And we haven't discussed it yet, but we will. Attacks which hit multiple enemies basically get double value from using the threat to increase the damage in assault mode. And there's other ways to spend it as well. So it's all quite interesting in terms of how the value is going to work out. But initial impressions, if you're in stealth form, this is really good to play. And if you are building into Passion for Justice, operative skill, trying to increase the threat you remove, well, it makes sense to kind of go all in on the multi-threat kind of cards. This is better for multiplayer typically because there's more threat, but even the odds in 4-player is disgusting. Why not increase it to remove 6 from every side scheme? Overwatch is super, super good. Multitasking is less popular these days because of Overwatch, but nonetheless, it is still a good card. It was a staple until Overwatch came out in the game. So you can kind of bring these cards along, as well as having covert surveillance to make sure your operative skill and Passion for Justice have plenty of targets. Next up, we have Secret Agent, which is an upgrade. He has 1 copy of it. It's a title. Hero response. After you resolve the ability of a preparation card you control, move 1 threat from a scheme to your suit form upgrade. So every time a preparation card goes off, that's right, Nick Fury is a preparation character, just like Black Widow, you get to move a threat from a scheme. So it could be a side scheme or a main scheme, which is really flexible. I really, really like that. And it's not just, 1 threat removed, it's 1 threat gained to then turn into damage. So I actually really like this card. I think it's going to be quite desirable to play because I think he has multiple preparations in his kit. The article basically said so, but it only shows us 1, which we're going to look at next, and that's Eye Patch Camera. So Eye Patch Camera says when any amount of threat will be placed on the main scheme, discard it, place up to 3 of that threat on your suit form upgrade instead. Should note that's a 2-cost upgrade, just like Counterintelligence, and just like Counterintelligence, it prevents 3 threat, and that's a Justice preparation card if you're unaware. So this is baseline the same as an aspect card we already have, except you get to put that threat, not just remove it, not just prevent it as it were, but you get to put it on your suit, and now it's 3 damage. So this is kind of free threat removal and 3 damage in the future. It doesn't shake out exactly like that, but it's a good rough kind of comparison. And I'm pretty excited for that. I think that's pretty good. He only has 1 copy of it because, 2 eye patch cameras on, you can't see. But he does have a way to recur it, and that's kind of a new basic card, which is pretty crazy. But before we get to that, what we now have is that Nick is going to make the enemy scheme for 1 less. He's going to want to fort for 2 to, use his gather intel ability on his identity card. So that's 3 threat, basically prevented or removed already. Then if you trigger Eye Patch Camera, it could prevent 3 threat. Secret Agent's going to remove 1. I think in solo play, you're going to have situations where you're trying to use these cards, but there isn't actually enough threat to get full value from all of them. Eye Patch Camera, unless the enemy schemes for 4 at least, just by preventing 1, you might not have enough threat to justify even using it, which is really interesting. So Nick Fury is a character that I think will be perfectly fine in solo play, but just a little bit better in multiplayer, which I think is fine. A significant amount of heroes are actually like that, just because there's more things to interact with in multiplayer and more people to cover different weaknesses, so on and so forth. But it's worth noting, you could remove too much threat here, even though you make the enemy scheme, which is kind of funny. I think one way to kind of alleviate that and deal with it is to run player side schemes, just to make sure you've got more threat out there. And you can even put the low priority ones, even some 0-cost ones, just throw them down. And if you don't have enough threat elsewhere, I guess Secret Agent can slowly take it from there. You'll eventually get a very nice benefit. So that's pretty interesting. But with this Eye Patch Camera, of which he only has 1 copy of, we now have this basic card, Practice Plan. 0 cost, and it's a response. After you discard a preparation card you control, discard Practice Plan, return that card to your hand from your discard pile. So it's a 0-cost card you put down, so it's 1 card going away, but then it will put 1 card back into your hand at a later time, except it's a card you really want because it's a preparation, because it's triggering Secret Agent. And Eye Patch Camera is quite a good card in my opinion. So if you see Eye Patch Camera early, you then have, let's say, 3 practice plans in your deck. You're potentially getting Eye Patch 4 times in 1 deck pass. Probably unlikely to actually have that happen. But certainly having 1 copy of it doesn't mean you're only going to be playing it once per deck cycle a lot of the time. I think in combination with his other preparations, which we haven't seen yet, it's going to be hard not to run free practice plans in every Nick Fury, because if you're not leaning into his preparation thing, it seems like such a big part of him that you probably just should be if you're playing him. And honestly, it looks quite good. Overall here, having looked at, how stealth will get you 1 threat, Nick Fury's basic port will get you 1 threat, but then Secret Agent, if that triggers, will get you 1, and actually his preparations he come with seem to get you extra as well. I think once set up, it's reasonable to assume you'll have a kind of an average of 3 to 4 threat per turn, which does mean if you have the right cards or, ability to go or trigger to do so, you could just keep flipping in and out of stealth and assault quite regularly. But it might take a couple of turns more at the start of the game, making Nick maybe slightly a slower start character than others, a bit like Maria, and I feel like that makes sense for these kind of, very human characters in a world, where all these characters have crazy superpowers. Maybe they're not as quick to, do the big flashy super thing, but still pretty good, I feel like. Pretty viable from everything I've seen so far. I like those cards. Having only 2 threat removal from your forwarding card, of which he has 2 copies, not great, but you are motivated to basic 4 all the time because you're not having to invest in defense, although you are making the enemy scheme. There's a lot of pieces moving together here, but in general, I do like what's going on. Now, since we're talking about threat a lot and how much he's going to build up, let's talk about spending it with assault. Let's look at what attacks he comes with, because he has 3 copies of concentrated fire. Now, this is a hero action. Deal 4 damage to this enemy. This attack gains range. If this attack defeats an enemy, choose. Place threat on your suit form equal to the enemy's printed scheme, or change to stealth suit form. So you can bust out of stealth form, take someone out, go back to stealth form. They never knew you were there. It's got a sniper in the art. I think that's really cool. Or you can get extra threat gained by getting threat equal to whatever their scheme was. That's kind of desirable if you want to stay in assault form, or maybe you just see that as more valuable than changing to stealth form. Now, for me, that decision might come down to how much scheme does the enemy have, because some of them have, 3 scheme, some of them have 1, some of them have 0. This is kind of interesting in that regard. I think at a baseline, being a 2-cost event and dealing 4 damage, it's a little bit below what we'd expect for a hero event, but kind of a little bit better than some aspect events, especially with its flexibility. It's kind of interesting how that goes, because you can enhance this damage. And I feel like a mistake some people make with Gambit is to treat enhancing their damage as kind of extra value, but you had to generate that value. That kind of ability to boost the damage is there in place of other abilities other heroes would have. So it's not like you can just boost concentrated fire's damage for free, but certainly boosting it is going to let it be very efficient and take out the enemy with the exact amount of hit points you need. No damage wasted. So I really do like that. It reminds me a lot of something else. So we have Gambit again as our comparison with Charged Card. He also has a 4 damage 2-cost attack that he is incentivized to increase its damage. So very much from the same blueprint here as far as I can see. But that's not the only comparison that came to mind, because there's another card which removes 2 threat, kind of like his 2 forwarding event, and could also deal 4 damage, just like the 3 copies of what seems to be his main attack card. And that is Nick Fury as an ally himself. So it's so interesting to me that his fort removes 2 threat and his attack deals 4 damage. So I'm wondering if we're going to get a draw 3 cards card somewhere in his kit to kind of give us the complete package here. Maybe. It feels pretty likely based on what I've seen so far. Maybe it could be one of his preparations if the right condition is met. Boom, get a bunch of cards. But we'll have to wait and see. The next card is Spray Fire. It's a 3-cost attack event, and it says choose a player, deal 3 damage to the villain and each minion engaged with that player. This attack gains ranged. We don't know if there's 1 or 2 of these so far, and when I first saw this, I was very underwhelmed, because we've got Blast of Wind and Ice Blast from, Storm and Iceman respectively, quite relatively recent heroes in terms of the game's life. They deal 3 damage to the villain and each minion engaged with a player. You get to choose the player as well with them, but they do something extra, such as, put down Frostbites or trigger Storm's Weather specials. So Spray Fire seems pretty lacking compared to that. It's just a damage without much benefit. But the difference with Spray Fire is this little word called attack. Blast of Wind and Ice Blast, and most multi-target things in the game which don't have a set amount of targets you could possibly hit, they're not treated as attack, but this is, which is huge, because now you can use Assault Form to increase its damage. So Spray Fire, hitting the villain and a minion ideally, but maybe the 2 minions, maybe there are 3, it has a high ceiling here, and that's pretty good. So each target you hit, you're getting that increased damage. So Spray Fire, just with Assault Form, spending 3 threat, could deal 6 damage to the villain and all the minions engaged with you. On minion-heavy scenarios, that's going to be crazy good, but just having 1 minion out, I still think this is going to be pretty desirable, especially for some of those higher health ones. So I like this card. I hope he has 2 of it, and I'm going to kind of operate under the assumption he has 2 of them, but If he doesn't, he doesn't. So in addition to your assault form powering up spray fire, we've also got the aggression cards. Keep up the pressure, warrior skill, aggressive energy. And if you have both aggressive energies in hand with warrior skill on the board, and let's say you defeat keep up the pressure, which gets you an attack card as well, you can do 10 damage to the villain and each minion, which is going to be very unlikely, but I wanted to point out how, absurd it could be. But really, if he's got 2 spray fires, I think running some of these cards becomes very, very desirable. Keep up the pressure is a good card anyway. And it starts to push you towards this kind of multi-attack build where you could put in other attacks which hit multiple targets to make sure you get the benefits from these bonuses. And maybe Nick Fury is a good multiplayer minion clearer. You might have to stay down for a turn, then, flip. So maybe there's a little bit of a downtime on it, but gather them up, hit multiple at once. Seems very, very efficient. And it's so interesting with stealth, because what I haven't talked about, but some people might have noticed or already known about, the force interrupt, when an enemy would attack you, it schemes instead. This works for minions. So you can leave minions out in front of you, and they'll all scheme against you. But a lot of minions only have 1 scheme, or some even have 0. And even the ones that have 2 in multiplayer, maybe not such of a bigger deal. So they're all scheming for less, because each time they scheme, you place 1 threat from them onto your suit. So having a bunch of low scheming minions in front of you might supercharge your stealth suit very quickly, let you flip down to assault more often, and then you can wipe them out in one huge shot. And that seems like a very fun playstyle. But the thing is, if you have multiple minions out against you, you're going to charge up quickly, which stops reducing the amount of threat they're doing. It stops putting threat onto the stealth suit. And given that we might be able to get 3 to 4 threat on our suit already per turn once we're set up, I don't know how desirable it's going to be to stack those minions up against you, but certainly you could leave one against you for 1 turn without as much consequence as most characters would. So I think that's kind of interesting and a kind of a soft benefit, but also a question mark as to how that's going to work out in practice. If it turns out to be very valuable to leave minions out in front of you, and you can reliably flip back to stealth form after going out and attacking a bunch, maybe you just leave a few there. It starts to make minion summoning and minion gathering look a lot better. Cards like Bring It, which reward you for having minions out, and even cards which interact with minions, which there are way too many to put here. I just threw Chase them down on the screen. All become a lot more consistent. So I'm kind of intrigued about that, but I'm hesitant to say it's going to be like really good or anything before actually trying it. Just because of the speed, I think you might be able to accumulate threat and then want to flip and spend it. Maybe you don't actually need many or any minions out too often. Of course, if minion summoning does turn out to be pretty good for him, if you do use this to, bring minions in, maybe anticipation becomes pretty good, because this is a preparation that readies you up, which means you're going to be able to fought again with, Nick to get extra threat put onto your suit because of his gather intel ability, but also it's a preparation. So it's going to trigger secret agent and get you another threat that way. So multiplayer, you might summon in some minions, and it will actually help you remove a lot of threat for the team. Just kind of weird, kind of exciting. I'm really, really intrigued by it. Overall, this is us having seen most of Nick's cards, and we're looking at, starting off getting 2 threat a turn. We're maybe going up to 3 to 4. There'll be turns where you have more than that, turns where you have less, depends on how the preparations turn out. But really, I think you're going to be able to flip quite often once you are set up. And each threat is worth a damage unless you have multi-target attacks, in which case it could be worth a lot more than that, depending on how many minions you can hit. At a minimum for multi-target attacks, obviously, 1 threat is going to be 2 damage, but if you can hit 3 or 4 minions with a spray shot, which will probably be, kind of rare, but kind of nice to have it, especially against, mutagen formula, Venom Goblin, that's actually kind of good. So I'm really intrigued by this, and looking at it, it is going to be like I said, a little bit slow just to get going. It's going to be a little bit fiddly, I think, between, stealth form, get the threat you need, go to assault form. Can you get back? How do you get back? Am I going to have to go alter ego? Am I even going to bother? Lots of question marks up there, but I don't think it's going to be frustrating. I think it's going to be a fun game plan to use. You're going to have to actually lean into what he wants to do, though, because you can't just, you could just play him like a regular hero, but things might get a little wonky. But so far, all positive signs. I like that he's got this distinct game plan that looks engaging, full of agency, full of interesting decisions. The only card we haven't looked at yet is Fury's Watch, which tells the time. It's a 1-cost upgrade, but also you can exhaust it and remove up to 2 threat from your suit and generate 2 resources. Each threat you remove, so it could just be 1 threat removed to gain 1 resource, but nonetheless, turning threat into a resource is quite a good conversion rate, and resources in general are very, very flexible. So I think this will be a very desirable card to play. And getting this mental resource is going to be very, very good for, a lot of Justice cards want a mental resource. Black Widow in Protection wants a mental resource. and that can protect you from advance. Now, if you're in stealth form and the enemy schemes against you, then you get advance. Oh no, maybe I'll lose the game. Black Widow can kind of re-roll that with that mental resource for a different encounter card. And of course, Hone Technique really likes even having 2 mentals for itself to get played in the first place. So Fury's Watch seems pretty good to me. I would say that, you're just converting threat you could use for something else into a resource. It's not as good as just a 1 or 2 resource generator, but it is a good conversion rate that, like I said, is flexible. So good card. Overall, by counting all his cards up, this is basically what we have so far. We don't know what his second card is. Maybe a signature ally, maybe Maria Hill. 3 copies of Concentrated Fire, 2 of his Forwarding event. 1 Spray Fire is guaranteed. The second one, we're not sure. 1 Eye Patch Camera, 1 Watch, and then 1 copy of Secret Agent. The article, like I said earlier, does say he has multiple preparation cards in his kit. So I'm thinking at least 1, maybe 2 more of these cards, on the right-hand column here are probably going to be the preparations, but we'll have to wait and see. Like I also said, I'm expecting something that draws him 3 cards, and I wouldn't be surprised if he gets some kind of, pistol upgrade, since all his cards are about shooting. Where's the gun? He's got to have something. Maybe it's a basic card, not quite sure yet, but fully expecting to see something. And I'm also hoping, which is a lot of hopes here, maybe it's a support or something, but some other reason to go to stealth form, just because I feel like there might be times where you actually just don't think it's worth it. But yeah, let's look at the aspect stuff. So we have the form changing events, first of all, that I want to talk about, which might seem like really obvious includes, oh, he's a form changing hero, let's include the form changing cards. But I don't really think that's the case, because if I'm in assault form going to stealth form, if I play surprise attack, I instantly get changed back to assault form, which I probably didn't want to do if I was changing to stealth form. Lay Down the Law is honestly pretty good, so I think that is maybe the best one here. Moxie in general, not super desirable, but Perseverance is a weird one, because let's say I'm going from Assault to Stealth form as well here. I'm probably not getting attacked for at least 1 turn, maybe 2, and that means the chance of a Treachery or something popping my Tough, not getting as much value, is quite high. So the only one I really like here is Lay Down the Law. Surprise attack is quite interesting. You do a big burst attack. If you attack to, break cover, go into assault form, spend a bunch of counters on that attack, but then also surprise attack because I changed form. You can do a huge amount of burst that way. So I don't hate it. But if I have to go back to stealth form or Ultra Ego first, then to stealth or something, Ultra Ego to stealth, there's just bad combinations for surprise attack. And I think Perseverance might lose value from the same kind of way. So I think if you're adding these to a deck, it's definitely possible. It could definitely be good, but you need to, I think about how often they're going to trigger. Because for me, the only one I'm really sure about right now is Lay Down the Law. And I don't even know if there'll be enough threat in solo, with the amount of other ways you want to remove threat and gain the threat to make it worthwhile. But multiplayer, definitely. One of the new cards Nick comes with is basically Pocket Sand. It's called Prism Dust. It's a tech card. Apparently, it's like fancy robot dust that shuts down technology. It's just Pocket Sand to me. He throws it at the enemy. And this 1-cost upgrade is Preparation traded, which is good for him. Tech traded, which is very interesting. Here, response attack. After a minion enters play, discard Prism Dust, confuse that minion, and deal 2 damage to it. It is exactly like Black Widow's Widow Bite, except instead of the stun, it confuses. But we have some interesting things at play here. Because it's an attack, it will break your cover. So if you throw dust in someone's eyes, they're going to know you're there. But you can use Assault form to increase the damage this does, so you can just outright defeat the enemy. And if you are, confusing a lot of minions, Cypher and Chamber are going to be really good ally options to help finish them off, since they have synergy with hitting confused enemies. One of the things that puts me a little bit off Float Like a Butterfly here is that you kind of, if you're in stealth form, you want the enemy to scheme against you, but if you're running lots of confusists for Float Like a Butterfly, perhaps, it's just a little bit weird with confusing the villain. Now I don't get any of the threat they would have, added onto my suit. 2 other new cards we have are Leo Fitz and Gemma Simmons, which I hear are in the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. show and referred to as Fitzsimmons. People like these characters. I've not much of an idea. I've only seen 2 episodes. We weren't friends with that show. But these are 3-cost supports that aren't actually 3-cost supports, because they follow the Web of Life and Destiny principle of if you have the right trait, they are cheaper. So outside of playing a shield hero, I don't think you take these very often. Certain characters maybe, but we're not really talking about that here. We're talking about Nick Fury. For Nick Fury, I think these look pretty good, because a lot of the tech cards, we just saw Prism Dust, but we've also got his eye patch camera. Maybe some of his other ones, the article does say he has lots of gadgets, including his watch. His watch is also tech. What Leo Fitz does is, as an Ultra Ego action, you exhaust him and search your deck for a tech card and add it to your hand. So you can play him as a 1-cost card, and when you're Ultra Ego, start to grab these tech pieces that you want, whenever you want them, as long as they're still in your deck, because he doesn't search a discard pile. Then Gemma Simmons, kind of the, she's the other part of the puzzle, the package. She is a resource generator for tech cards. So that's really, really curious. It is a mental resource, so it was pointed out on Nelson's stream. It works on rocket boots for Iron Man, but I don't know if Iron Man's going to want to do this when he has access to Quinn Carrot and Ingenuity, but you never know. But for Nick Fury, I think these look pretty decent. If a lot of your preparations are going to be tech, then Leo finding them, Gemma paying for them, could be quite nice. We'll have to see exactly how it shakes out and what he has available before I say anything definitive, but good options to keep in mind. And with this kind of tech synergy going on, it makes Repurpose very, very interesting. And this is such a weird character for Repurpose, because if you're in stealth form, well, Repurpose is often used to attack, and that's going to break your cover, which maybe you want. Maybe you can do a big burst attack, but you're going to have to repurpose something, and the most common card for that is Energy Barrier. But if you're in stealth form, you're not losing counters, you're not getting attacked really, so it's kind of interesting. We do have Plasma Pistol, which is a tech card which doesn't, it does damage, but it doesn't actually count as an attack, so you can use this while you're stealthed, and for some reason they will never see where the Plasma Pistol is coming from. I think that's pretty funny. You could also use a card like Rogue, the ally, to damage you to chip down your energy barriers before you repurpose them. But it's going to be a little bit weird. I'm kind of intrigued to see how it works out. I don't think you really want to repurpose his watch or his eye patch camera, but if you needed to, you could, and that's strong to have that option. I do wonder if repurposed Nick Fury might be best in multiplayer as threat removal, because repurposing while you're in stealth form, it's going to let you, fort again without breaking cover. You can just keep getting threat added to your suit or taking it off schemes. I don't know, kind of weird. I think it's a little bit awkward and maybe not super desirable, except in a world where you have Fitz and Simmons to find and pay for these tech upgrades. I don't know. Let me know what you think, guys. I'm excited to try this, but I'm not 100% sold on it yet. It's something I do have to, get on the table and see how it's all going to work together with many moving pieces combined. So let's go back to preparations, and oh boy, one of the strongest cards in the game is Rapid Response. It's Ally Recursion. It's a 2-cost card that can bring back very expensive, very powerful allies. And as a preparation card, Nick's going to like it. We looked at Practice Plan earlier, which is going to bring preparation cards you trigger back to your hand. In essence, Practice Plan will recur Rapid Response, which will recur whatever allies you have, some of the best, most powerful cards in the game. One of which is Maria Hill. Now, if he has Maria Hill as a signature ally, he won't be able to take this card, and that will shut this down immediately. But there's still plenty of other good allies to recur, don't you worry about that, including a new version of Nick Fury that Nick Fury himself can play. But if he doesn't have Maria Hill as a signature ally, then this combo is going to go crazy. And on general, Rapid Response Practice Plan, you're going to be able to do some crazy, crazy recursion shenanigans. I also want to point out now his team-up card, Super Spies, because, if you can keep bringing Maria Hill back into play, keep her around, it's going to make this very consistent. You can add threat tokens to his suit for, free damage, maybe more if you do a multi-attack, maybe more value if you can use his watch to turn them into resources. But you can also put counters onto shield supports, which will include the, big 6-cost ones that come with Maria Hill as a hero. And you could just be put on med team or something, which is still valuable. So really kind of an interesting team-up card. And for 0 cost, I think this is very, very good. Other leadership cards that I think will be interesting are like Strength in Numbers band together. If you're in stealth form, you don't need to block with allies. You are more easily than some characters going to be able to build up that, little army to then get resources and card draw from, which could be really interesting. Set you up fast, get more preparations down. We also have You Got This, which came with Magneto, which is a 1-cost event. After you exhaust your hero to make a basic 4 attack, discard an ally you control, add its stats to your stat, and then ready your hero. So readying up is going to let you remove more threat, which is going to mean you gather more intel, but also it could just let you, when you break cover, attack more often with your hero, be able to spend more threat more quickly for that big burst damage. So I actually think that's kind of interesting. The last point for leadership that I want to mention is Mission Leader, which is the only card in the game that really synergizes with the soldier trait properly. And since I think he's going to remove so much threat sometimes in solo that you'll need player side schemes, this card, which lets you draw a card when you defeat a side scheme, seems pretty good for Nick. One of the first things I thought of when I saw that when you're in stealth form, the enemy schemes when they would attack. So what about the cards that make the enemy attack? Now you're making them scheme. I think that's so weird, really interesting. Taunt and Bait and Switch being the main ones. So there's also toe-to-toe and aggression, but since it's an attack, makes you break cover, the enemy will still attack you. But Taunt, you make the enemy scheme against you now with Nick Fury, and then you get to draw 3 cards. I think that's fascinating because they're going to, add more threat to the main scheme, sure, but you also get one of that threat actually put onto your suit as a bonus while getting more cards. So I think Taunt Nick Fury could be a thing. I really want to try it, see how that works out. Bait and switch, it's better on him than like most characters, but I don't quite see it being used in my opinion. And I think it's interesting that Nick Fury has more synergy with Pool than some heroes. I think it's really funny that you could take Bob, Agent of Hydra, while you're like the Shield, agent, director, spy kind of guy. So having an Agent of Hydra in your deck is really funny to me. But what's really interesting is that he's the acceleration icon. So if you are not having a threat to remove in solo play for maximum threat gain, well, guess what? You now have more threat from an acceleration icon, which is really funny. Not My Responsibility can help, if the threat is going to maybe knock the main scheme over or something. It gives you kind of a way to deal with that a little bit, which is interesting, without like a confused preventing any threat from being put on your suit. So kind of interesting in that way. Stick-to-itiveness, readying you up, can let you gather more intel because you can ready more to, thwart more. And then self-confidence. If you're in stealth form, not getting attacked, you're staying at higher health for longer, making the double, triple resource cards in Pool just be more useful for longer. And he does have that free cost spray fire card, so if you want to burst out of stealth form with style, this is going to do it. This is going to help you pay for that, as well as just set you up faster in general anyway. So I actually think, he's got a surfboard in his alter ego art, so swimming in the pool isn't that far away. He likes the water. Nick is a water creature. Looking at some basic cards he'll enjoy, we have Sky Destroyer, which as a shield character, I think, maybe that's, kind of obvious just as a consideration. But since it doesn't count as an attack when, after you play a shield card, exhaust it, deal damage, you can deal damage with this while, you're in stealth form without breaking stealth, which I just think is interesting. Because all of his attack cards, whether he has 4 or 5 of them, we'll have to see, all have the ranged kind of keyword built into them. Sharpshooter becomes kind of interesting. I don't think this is going to be, and maybe even Sky Destroyer, the top cards for him, the meta-defining, these are his strongest decks ever. But I think these cards are both thematic and really interesting in terms of how they interact with his kit. So I wanted to mention them. I actually really like that. Then we've got the preparation cards. And I not listed all the preparation cards from all the aspects in a game because I could, because as a preparation character, they're all now in consideration. But the basic ones could work with any aspect. I think that makes them especially relevant, especially as espionage requires you to control a spy character, which Nick is on both alter ego and hero form. Now, I haven't talked much about aggression at this point, but I talked about it a lot earlier with those multi-attacks and maybe minion summoning, and anything that, gets extra value when you increase the, threat on it, even into the fray. It's going to remove more threat when you use threat to power up its damage. A lot of weird stuff there, but I think aggression has some really good synergy. I think protection with repurpose is like the main thing I'm looking at. A little bit uncertain. Leadership is leadership. It's going to be good, especially as he seems pushed more toward recursion or like strength in numbers builds. These are already 2 really powerful ways to play the game already. So that's fine. But the one aspect I really avoid talking about is Justice. Because Justice looks good for Nick Fury. He looks like he has a lot of synergy there. He comes with a Justice precon, so kind of goes without saying to some degree that, he's intended to work with it. But we have, at a very basic level, under surveillance, going to increase the target threat value of a scheme. So put this on the main scheme, it makes being in stealth form, making the villain scheme more often a lot safer. But because you could be in stealth form a lot and the villain is reliably scheming, foiled is maybe more useful for Nick Fury than any other character in the game. It's an interrupt that when a boost card is turned face up during a scheme activation, cancels its boost icons. Usually this card is a waste of space because you won't have it in hand at the right time. Then when you do, the boost card is like 0 or 1 and it's barely worth using on it. But the villain will scheme a lot against Nick and it will do it kind of safely. So I kind of want to try this. I'm always looking for a good home for this card that makes me think, wow, this was really worth the deck space over like the 50 different options I could have put in instead. But under surveillance, definitely going to be a very strong card. It's already a very strong card on its own. Next up, going into a proper archetype, we have basic thwarting for Nick. And I've talked about basic thwarting to gather intel to put threat on your suit a lot in this video. But with heroic intuition, your basic thwart gets even better. Justice Serve can ready you up for a different scheme. That's really good. And making entrance just is going to kind of tie into all of that, though whether you need the healing remains to be seen. But I can definitely see a world in multiplayer where you especially 2 and 3 player, you kind of lean into doing this basic thwarting to cover most of the team's threat removal needs. And I kind of like it. So I think that's pretty cool. We've talked about preparations a lot, but obviously Justice is kind of the preparation aspect because you've got Agent Coulson, who's also shield traded and spy traded, both things Nick has and can kind of interact with a little bit. He can search for a preparation card, which is going to get you more preparations, more consistently, more choice over them, and then you can trigger Secret Agent more. So I'm really intrigued to see how that goes. Spycraft is especially kind of good for Nick since he has the spy trait on both sides, so he can play that very easily. Which can also dodge advance if you were worried in solo play about the threat going over. Counterintelligence also helps that problem. So the solo Nick in Justice should be actually really good and absolutely fine on main schemes, and I don't think he'll have that much trouble anyway, if I'm honest, especially at least against most scenarios. But yeah, this is pretty cool. I'm really excited for this. Feels very synergistic with Nick on multiple levels with, Coulson, Shield, Preparations, Spy. Awesome. Love it. So while we're talking about Shield, we might as well talk about Shield. He's got the Shield trait. He's going to have Shield decks. They're going to be good. I like it. It was pointed out on the live stream of Nelson that Quake, minions are going to scheme against Nick Fury more than normal because of the stealth form. After it minion schemes, you can exhaust Quake to deal damage. That's kind of interesting. Homeland Intervention, Global Logistics, exhaust some shield stuff. Sure, this just all goes with, Nick Fury having the shield trait on his hero as well. And then, of course, Monica Cheng, Field Agent, any of the normal shield stuff, it's going to help kind of reinforce this stuff. And what I think is really useful is that, if you're in multiplayer and the villain is scheming against you a lot, Homeland Intervention can actually end up removing a lot of threat. But Global Logistics, even in solo play, is going to be able to dodge advance, set things up, maybe make things favorable for where you want to remove threat from, or trigger certain preparations, by manipulating that in counter deck to make sure you get the right thing. So I'm hugely looking forward to that. I feel like Global Logistics Nick Fury is going to be one of the most sort of thematic ways to play him. I can't wait. I love Global Logistics. You guys probably know that if you watch a lot of my videos. So in summary, we've looked at a lot of archetypes and cards already. And I think there's even more that I haven't mentioned that are going to work just fine with him. He seems pretty flexible. The big thing I think I'd be avoiding is basic defense build because, in stealth form, you're not getting attacked. And then you just have 2 defense anyway. He could have something to increase his defense we haven't seen, and that would change. But for me, protection, that repurpose is a big question mark. That might be really good. And other than that, I'm not really feeling it. But the other aspects all have something intriguing. And the most intriguing options I will summarize like this. We have multi-attack from aggression, a bunch of stuff from Justice that we literally just looked at. Leadership, recursion, strength in numbers, so good. Maybe a little bit less powerful, but maybe more interesting, more unique here is new card, You Got This. Actually really interested to try Nick with Pool. I think Nick Fury Pool sounds kind of weird. Sounds really interesting to me. So a lot of kind of different options for him that I'm really intrigued, and I do think this is the tip of the iceberg, especially with new cards coming this wave, new shield stuff that will hopefully synergize with him having the shield trait, and maybe new preparation cards, because in the practice plan art we saw Winter Soldier. Could Winter Soldier also be another preparation focused character, or at least come with new ones? We shall see. In terms of what character Nick Fury will play like, if you're interested in getting this expansion, maybe you haven't made up your mind. For me, Gambit really does look like a very, very close kind of comparison. It will be different, but there will be similar parts. If you play them back to back, it'll feel much more similar than playing like completely different characters and then one of these two. But I don't think that's a bad thing. I actually think he maybe looks a little bit more fun than Gambit, and I like Gambit quite a bit. So Nick Fury, for me, I have high expectations. Hopefully it meets it. We'll see. But because he plays with preparations as well, there's a bit of Black Widow in there. Because you have to build up, you can have like downturns and, bigger burstier turns. I think that'd be kind of, like Nebula with her techniques. And of course, with the stealth mode, making the enemy scheme for one less. A little bit like Jennifer Walters when she uses I Object. So a few different parts from other characters that you could see in here. But I do think the overall way it's going to play out, the combination of the charging up to, increase attacks, but also player preparations, it's going to be a very unique combination. I think Nick Fury looks very unique overall, even if we can see some other parts of him from other characters. Really, really like this take on the character. Very, very cool. So this is the part of the video where I predict his power, and I've never done this before. I basically put 3 stars in every category. I'm gonna be honest, when I started doing this format, how many stars out of 5? I said I wasn't doing half stars, but I feel like a lot of these could be half stars one way or the other. So I don't see it as completely even across the board as much as I could, but really I felt like each of them deserved 3 stars, even if just from a slightly optimistic point before we know everything else, before I played him. I don't want to rate him down too much. Damage might seem to start a little bit low, but with the assault form increasing the damage, being able to increase multi-attack damage could be pretty good. I'm guessing one of his preparations will do some kind of damage, in his kit itself. Maybe he'll have a pistol. He's got like a knife and a different kind of weapon in his hero art. So we'll see how that goes. But for me, damage could be anywhere between like 2.5 to 3.5. Not quite sure how that will shake out. Forwarding on a similar vein, he's got 2 forwarding built in, which is good. But his forwarding card removes 2 threat, isn't good. But then Secret Agent removes 1 threat each time a preparation triggers, is good. We'll see how this shakes out. It's this weird place where there could be too much threat for you in solo play, but there could also be not enough. So in that regard, I'm not sure, and we'll have to see how it all shakes out in the long run. Kind of a bit of a question mark on both of those for me, because all the moving parts interacting with them too. Survivability is a weird one. I mean, because of stealth form being in that, presumably quite a bit, you're not getting attacked. I think, you could say, oh, he's really got high survivability. But when you're actually in the form to get attacked, you've got 2 defense, 10 hit points, so that's it. Probably a little bit below average in that regard. No defense event we've seen yet or anything. So I'm not sure whether to mark this down because of that or up because you might not be getting attacked very much. So that's a weird one. That's why there's a question mark. Economy, yeah, he looks fine. He's got, the normal hand size. He's got his watch, which can get you 2 resources. It is converting something else, but nonetheless, you can get those 2 resources, I think, fairly consistently. I feel like he'll just feel like an average money character is what I've seen so far. Bit of setup, put it average as well. I mean, I think Secret Agent looks good. I think his watch looks good, but I don't think any of them seem like mandatory. You need these to be able to play Nick Fury, but I think there'll be a nice boost. I don't know. I feel like I've not seen enough of his setup to really judge this. I do think you need to build up, the threat to get the assault, bonuses, which could be seen as setting up in that regard. So maybe I should mark this down. But he doesn't look like he needs a lot to really get his game plan going either. Reliability is also in a weird place. This is rating, all player counters kind of in some sort of ambiguous muddle, because in solo play, making an enemy scheme, it just is slightly weird, and it will have different benefits or consequences depending on the scenario. It's a little bit strange whether you have the cards to go to the right form at the right time or not, or you want to break cover and get the damage out at the right time. Could be a little bit strange. I could mark this down, but at the same time, with preparations and all this control, you are going to be able to influence the battlefield quite a bit. So I'll have to see how that shakes out. This one probably could have had a question mark as well. Then we've got card value. Something I haven't really focused on a lot is that his identity. There's no extra resource on turn 1, no extra card draw. Most characters have something to give them a little bit of oomph straight out of the gate, whereas with Nick, it's like, straight out of the gate, I need to start building up counters so I can get more, output. And I think that has a significant effect on hero strength. We can look at Jubilee, who does get a resource if she exhausts, but she exhausts, so she loses out on some stats early on. We've got characters like Iceman, doesn't really gain anything immediately. And then, of course, we've got characters like Hawkeye. Just if you don't get a special bonus when you start off the game, it tends to have quite a big effect on the character, I think, actually, because it's kind of, if you get a good start with more resources, more cards, more options, you can do more things early on, which will set you up for success on each subsequent turn. So having a lower impact identity card early on, I think actually impacts a hero's power more than you would expect. But it's not the end of the world. I think his stats are really good. I think his recovery is good. I think his cards are, slightly underwhelming in the amount of threat removed or the amount of damage done with his, normal attack, concentrated fire. But they're not bad values. They have extra benefits, different things they can do. So 3 stars, I feel like, in the middle of 5 stars, it's fine. I really feel like he's very much in the middle for a lot of things. This kind of leads me to say that he looks pretty balanced. And well, that typically means in a superhero game where everyone's super powerful, he might end up being a little bit lower in power on, the grand scheme of things, but I don't think that's bad. He's a human on a world of superheroes. I think if Nick Fury was like the strongest character in the game, it'd be like, how is this, guy stronger than all these superheroes that he, recruits to fight the baddies? And I think he looks strong enough to take on basically whoever he wants with a good rate of success. So I don't think he looks weak, but the average point of strength in the game, the halfway mark, which he will be the 57th hero. So like the 28th hero is the halfway point now. The top 25, 28 heroes are really strong. Like the average point, with the current card pool as well in the living card game, these characters are all dunking on the hardest villains pretty reliably if you don't hold back for strength, doing crazy stuff. So being a little bit below that isn't that bad. So that's my little disclaimer that to put him as balanced here in a world of superheroes maybe means he's not super strong. And to really highlight this point, Gamora is a character that I talked to Web Warrior Fanatic about recently in the comments, Deadwolf on Discord. And Gamora I used to consider a top 10 hero. Now I don't think she's in the top 25. So to be below the top 25 heroes, not really a bad thing at all, because it used to be in the first 3 expansions or so of the game and the core set, you would have been a really strong hero at that point anyway. So, perspectives change. The game is what it is in the modern day, but Nick Fury, maybe not going to be the most powerful character, but going to be very fun and strong enough. Ease of play, I put below average because, got lots of moving parts. Variety, I put at 4 stars. I really think I could have talked about a lot more cards in this already quite long deep dive. So that fills me with hope. We're going to get new cards this wave, which are going to be good for him too. So I would say, compared to my Maria Hill review, which I also put at 4 stars, I think I overestimated her slightly. I'm going to push her variety estimate down to 3 stars. If you've seen that video, if you've not, just pretend I put it at 3 stars. In a similar way, maybe put her power down a little bit too, because I feel like early game going to be a little bit tough for her. Late game really strong. We have quite a few characters like that, and early game, again, I'm talking about how the identity cards early on make such a big difference. I really feel like maybe I was a little bit too generous with Maria, but we'll see how it works out, because once her engine is running, it's really strong. Talking about Nick here, though, I've kind of built it up long enough. I've rambled long enough. I'm going to say, on the whole, if I had to pick exactly where he's going to fall, out of 57 heroes, I'm going to guess he's actually going to be around 42nd. And that does mean there's like, what, 15 characters below him? I mean, I don't know. I think realistically, it's probably going to be more like this. He could be anywhere between 32nd and 49th, which on a tier list, I don't know, is somewhere between B and C tier, which I think is absolutely fine for regular human in superhero game with this really interesting game plan. If I was rating for fun, though, my prediction right now is 5 stars. My prediction is that I'm going to love Nick Fury. I would be shocked if I didn't. I'm more excited about him than any recent hero. I was really excited about Maria Hill. I'm on Team Nick Fury. I just think the interaction between so many attacks and schemes and forwarding and just all these different parts looks so good. I keep saying agency, interactiveness. That is what I love. Parts of the game that talk to different parts. Really, really like that. So Maria Hill's counter management still looks incredibly fun. Let me know in the comments who you prefer. Let me know if you think this kind of power estimate is accurate or if you feel differently. And yeah, I hope you've enjoyed this. This has probably been longer than average because he's such an interesting, in-depth hero with all these, I keep saying it, moving parts. So hopefully you've enjoyed this. Like, comment, subscribe if you have. And I'll see you in the next video, which should actually be my Magneto review, which I was going to do today. I've just about got over my cold. But hey, new hero on a Tuesday article. Here we are. See you guys.